Know that I am challenged with teams. So do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys see Brandy on the screen though with teams. So I guess it goes to the speaker view. So I see you now, Monica. Okay, cool. I'll close out of this. All right. Well, thank you, NFP Latin BRG, for the opportunity to present today. I can't really see the screen with Teams, so it's throwing me off versus like Zoom. So I just hope everyone can hear me and see me. But today we're going to talk about the foundation of the ABCDs of professional development, like what's more foundational than the ABCDs. And Brandy and I will talk to you about where we came up with that, how it was the framework for our success when we came together, how we implemented into our daily habits, and a little bit more about Misfits Unplugged, our community. Feel free to please participate at any point, raise your hand, drop a comment. Monica, I'll rely on you to let me know if there's any comments, because I'm usually the facilitator of looking at the comments, but I'm a little challenged today. And then we'll just jump right in. So, Misfits Unplugged, we're a dynamic duo of minority women who bring together the best of both worlds. So, we focus on what we've learned along our way in corporate America, along with our street smarts, our grit, our life paths, and where we have started to where we are today. And that's how we came together to build Misfits Unplugged. We've climbed the corporate ladder, and we have experienced firsthand some of the trials and triumphs of navigating a system that sometimes overlooks people like us, or oftentimes overlooks people like us. But instead of conforming, we became accountability partners for one another, harnessing our individuality to come together and build business and build our careers. For those of you who don't know me formally, I am Isabel Velasquez, the Vice President of Insurance Operations for Lennox Advisors, who is a wholly owned NFP firm. I'm also the co-chair of the Latin BRG alongside our beloved Monica Jimenez. And on my free time, I'm the co-founder of Misfits Unplugged with Brandy, who will be sharing about herself in a moment. Born and raised in Washington Heights, a lot like the musical. If you've seen it, that's where I grew up, spent 20 some odd years of my life. I'm a 50-50 blend of first generation Cuban American and Puerto Rican. I have a very rambunctious toddler, and reason why I locked the door because she is home today. I started my career 15, I think it's a lot longer than that, but I don't want to age myself. 15 plus years ago in insurance as administrative support, worked my way up to where I am today in operational leadership in the insurance industry, hold a master's in organizational leadership. And for the last 5-6 years, I've been leading and supporting the NFP and Lennox efforts in the diversity, inclusion, and belonging space. So I'll throw it over to Brandy.
Well, hello, NFP family, and thank you so much for having us today or having me today. I am half co-founder of Misfits Unplugged with Isabel Velasquez. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, moved to Brooklyn, New York almost 20 years ago in pursuit of a music career. So a quick trivia point about me is that I am a published R&B singer, songwriter, and producer turned insurance executive. And I'll save that story for another webinar. But I am the wife and proud mom of a 6-year-old rambunctious boy and 2 Yorkie Schnauzers. I started out in the financial services industry, like Isabel, a little over 15 years ago. I don't want to tell my age, but I have over 15 plus years of leadership in operational leadership in the financial services industry, leading in advanced support for producers along with risk management and procurement. I am currently the VP of New Business and Operations for an NFP firm called Cedar Point Financial out of Westport, Connecticut. I also hold a master's of organizational leadership from Mercy College. And that's my spiel. So who is Misfits Unplugged? People always ask us, how did we come up with this name, right? And a really short story is that Isabel and I worked together many years ago at another firm and really started out as arch enemies and became fast friends and colleagues because we bonded over the frustration of being sort of stuck in middle management and not really having what we considered the mentorship and the resources and opportunities to get to the executive leadership that we really wanted. So the Misfits piece is all about us thinking outside of the box. As Isabel mentioned, we put together a strategy and some goal setting foundational points that her and I have been practicing for many, many years, and we've just packaged it for you now. But the Misfits piece is the thinking outside of the box. We never want to be put in a box. The unplugged piece is the skill sharing piece. We have a podcast called Getting Unstuck with Misfits Unplugged, which is streaming on all platforms. And that's just us giving back, wanting to share our experiences as women of color, sort of climbing the corporate ladder, so to speak, and just talking about the challenges and successes that comes along with that. At the end of the day, we're just two women of color wanting to use our platform and our experience to empower careers, amplify voices, and drive inclusion.
All right, so we're jumping on into the content and why everyone's here today. I learned something already that apparently Brandy thought I was her arch enemy when all I wanted to do was be friends. No, but so Brandy also stole some of my mojo of what I was going to say on here. We've been saying this spiel for over 15 years, so now we kind of have a little bit of overlap in it. But essentially, like she said, we came together earlier on in our career and we struggled. We were really good at our jobs, but we were not being recognized to move into leadership roles. We at our firm or at in the industry as a whole, because we were in the insurance industry, leadership did not look like us. It was a very white male driven, and that's what leadership and all of the folks at the round tables look like. So we struggle to move, or be even looked at or considered for those opportunities. Although we worked longer and harder hours to build credibility, concurrently going to school, working full time, and a lot of other things we were juggling at the time, we consistently were overlooked for opportunities. And just like Brandy mentioned, we felt stuck. We were paycheck to paycheck. We didn't have the resources or the support system to uplift us and give us opportunities. So without knowing it at the time, we were following this ABCDs framework, which is essentially a brainstorming, self-reflection activity, which identifies your assets, your blind spots, your choices, and your destroyers. So we're going to jump in with the assets, and Brandy is going to talk through it. We only have, let's say, 5 slides, and really this is about open conversation. So A is about assets.
So assets. Why do we start with assets? I mean, it is the basement, as Isabel said, foundational point that we always recommend that our clients and mentees start with, because we do believe that your assets are the things that open up and unlock the doors of opportunity for you. So what are they? They are your high value skills. It is your secret sauce. It is the thing that you bring to any group, to any organization, whether it be your family, your job, or some other third party organization that brings about positivity and progression in any one of those instances. You want to think about common themes, right? Like, so when you're thinking about assets, you're thinking about not just the hard skills, but also the what we consider soft skills too. So hard skills would be, I'm great at meeting deadlines. I'm great at technology. I'm, great at leading teams. That's all hard skill sort of stuff. Your soft skills could be, that you're really good at leading from behind, or maybe you're the empathetic person that has a lot of wisdom, that people come to you and open up to you. That's a great foundational way for you to open up what we consider relationships with people in our industry. When you're thinking about what your assets are, you want to think about what comes easy to you. What are the things that you do? What's your natural skill set that you bring to any group? So I'll use myself as an example, because I mentioned earlier that, I moved from the music industry into the insurance industry, which are two completely different industries on both coins, right? And so my 3 themes are technology, organizing confusion, and executive leadership. So, in the music realm, I was always fascinated with technology. I really enjoyed mixing and mastering songs. On the other end, in insurance, I really enjoy jerry-rigging CRMs to get the best data out of it, to figure out how we can use that data for operational purposes. I've always been really, really good at organizing confusion, so to speak. So I like putting together complex concepts and bringing it to a successful sort of streamlined situation. So whether that's me creating a song and figuring out, all of those difficult melodies and creating a song. It, to me, it's the same skill set as trying to get a really, really sick person with a complex health history covered in our industry. And lastly, I just wanted to be a music executive. So, I wanted to be the Sylvia Rome of music. And fast forward 15 years later, I'm an insurance executive. So it all boils down to those three things. So when you're thinking about your assets, you want to think about those things that are common themes, things that light you up, things that you don't mind doing. If you have trouble figuring out what those assets are, our recommendation is to look at your circle around you, whether it be your friend groups, your family, your supervisor, if you're part of any third-party groups, church groups, organizations. Asking for feedback is like key one. And when you get all of that information, if you don't know it yourself, you really are opening up doors for yourself by figuring out what really, really makes you happy, because then you can kind of create a career or reverse engineer a career that is in alignment with your particular goals and strengths. And Isabel will go on to our blind spots.
So blind spot is exactly what it sounds like. So blind spots are areas where you may have limited awareness or understanding of your potential challenges or opportunities. So I challenge you, while I'm giving the spiel about blind spots, to think about anywhere that you might be challenged and that someone has maybe potentially asked you to identify, whether it be a manager or yourself, or you're saying, hey, this isn't something that I'm really good at. And you need to develop. I want to hear a little bit more from you as well, versus us just continuing to just throw things at you. So identifying your blind spots will help you recognize potential pitfalls that may otherwise be overlooked. So blind spots can be individual, or it could be, blind spots for your organization. But I would say, for today's purpose, let's just focus on you as an individual. And what are some of your potential blind spots? They could be some limited skills or knowledge that you are lacking to kind of either move into the next role or just grow as a professional in your current role. So the awareness of your blind spots will allow you to proactively conquer them, destroy them, move them out the way so that they are no longer stopping you. So I would tell you today just to think about that. Navigating challenges could be something so small, but is really, weighing on someone else when they're considering you. And I'll give you some examples of what that looks like. So, and then how to. Brandy mentioned in assets, getting feedback. That is going to be the theme of today. For you to continue to grow as a professional, as a person, gathering feedback from those that work with you 40, 50 hours a week is invaluable to your growth. Sometimes it's the most vulnerable and hard thing to ask for, but it will help you. So, because I'm a part of the NFP platform, I'll let you know you can do it through Lattice, and you can send out information, or you can just reach out to people individually and ask them for a quick chat, 15, 20 minutes to give you some feedback. I can tell you I've done that personally, and I've taken all the collective feedback, and then you can kind of decipher from there what's real and what you can actually control. And at the end of it, you can just get overall feedback and see how you can navigate different personalities. So something specifically about me is I talk very quickly, which I'm in this conversation reminding myself to slow down. And it could be culturally, right? Latina, I move very quickly. My brain is moving quickly sometimes, that I have to slow down. Just because it's the first thought in my mind and I blurt it out doesn't mean that that is the right thing. So some of the things that have come out of it is feeling, maybe there's people that are feeling like I am not actively listening to them, or I'm overshadowing maybe my peers or other people that work with me, or I'm bulldozing conversations. And it isn't in any capacity my intent, but it was something I wasn't aware of. It was a blind spot. But when I started soliciting feedback, or feedback was being given to me, whichever you want to, however you want to look at it, then I had to take a step back after, you might have an emotional response to it, and you want to, ignore it. I had to say, okay, well, I'm hearing this from different areas. Then there has to be some truth to what I'm being told. And then after you do some self-reflection, then you can say, okay, this is a blind spot. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't thinking about how it can impact the people around me. And how do I want to be perceived, right? So the further along you're getting, or where you want to get in your career, your personal brand is important, and how other people perceive you. I know a lot of people say, perception is reality, but each individual's person's perception of you is their reality. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. And I wanted to be considered a collaborator and a sounding board for the people around me and uplifting people is the whole point of why we created Misfits. So when I'm getting feedback and being seen in a negative light as far as my, how I collaborate, I had to take a step back and say, okay, well, what am I doing? So it was something as simple as just slowing down a little bit and just absorbing what people are saying around me, and then making a decision. How to navigate a conversation or how to make a decision. So that's an example. But I keep challenging you to think about any blind spots that you may have, and how you have overcome them in your life. And if anyone wants to share, you can unmute yourself. I really wanted this to be collaborative, or you can throw something in the chat. So I'll throw it over to Brandy.
So we really do follow the ABCs, so to speak. So once you get to see your choices, you've already sort of figured out your assets. You've created sort of an avatar of yourself in terms of what you like, who you want to be, what comes natural to you, how you contribute and how you add value to the groups that you're in. You've identified your blind spots. So maybe you figured out, hey, I don't have as much tech skill as I think that I need going into this next 5 or 10 years of my life, or whatever that blind spot looks like for you. Well, now you have some choices to make. And this is where we activate our decision-making and our goal setting skills, because you reflected on all of that. And now you're going to create a map. And it doesn't have to be a neat map. It can literally be you brainstorming. Isabel and I are doodlers. There's apps for this, but whatever your way of getting it out on paper so you see it is the best thing I recommend for you to do. When you see it visually and you're looking at your map and you're looking at, okay, where did I need the development and where are my assets not being used? That's sort of the first place that you want to start, and then start making choices. The choices that I always recommend for people to do, because when you're trying to do something as big as pivot, or as big as go to that next level in your career, whether it be salary or via some title, a lot of times you don't have all that you need to get there, and the choices that you make are going to be detrimental. I always say to start with the lowest hanging fruit. Always start with your short-term goals, the things that you can get done in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, anything less than a year, because anything more than that is going to feel overwhelming for a lot of people. So if it's tech, is there a 6-week course I can take? Is this just a matter of I have all the skills and I really just need more visibility? Maybe that's just a conversation with my supervisor. That's just putting something on the calendar. Do I need mentorship? Maybe I just don't know, what the next step should be. If that's a conversation, that's definitely a short-term goal. Your long-term goals would be anything over 12 months, right? So if at this point in your career, you feel like you need a 4-year degree, then obviously that's something that you have to plan for. But I always say that the small wins are the best. And when you're making choices, you want to make the kind of choices that are going to give you momentum in your career. You don't want to choose something so big and so out of reach that you sort of give up on it. At the end of the day, our choices are the beginning phases of you building out a strategic framework for your next step, for your next goal. And hopefully your goal is to get into a career, whether that be with NFP or entrepreneurship, whatever that looks like for you, that is in alignment with your natural skill set, that is in alignment with where your life is going. And you can actually see it and not feel overwhelmed by it. And we can go into destroyers now.
So destroyer sounds a bit harsh, I know, but it could be an opportunity versus something as dramatic as the word destroyer. It also starts with D because we needed a D for our ABCDs. But destroyer is a factor that can hinder your progress. It derails your efforts. It undermines your success. Sometimes it's internal, which is a theme, or sometimes it's external. So internal, some examples of that would be head trash, self-doubt, lack of motivation, procrastination. And we've all had procrastination, and it leads to poor time management, ineffective communication, and things in that nature. So those are some examples of internal destroyers that are preventing you from accelerating, moving on. External could be a million different things that could be a destroyer for you externally. So it could be a toxic work culture. It could be the people that you work with. It could be a limitation in work-life balance or lack of work-life balance or self-care. The list goes on, and there could be things that are specific to your role, like market changes and investments and things like that, depending on what you're experiencing. That could be an external destroyer. What's really, really a good part about NFP is that you do those SMART goals on an annual basis, which are specific to you. So whatever your destroyer is at the point, and I'll give you some examples of what those look like, you should be altering your goals to be specific to what you are in that moment. Not where you necessarily want to be in a year from now, because what you're experiencing and the destroyers that you're faced with right now are the things that you need to take into consideration. So in the last 15 years, as I think about different road bumps or destroyers that came along in my life, there was terrible ex-boyfriends. When I was doing my undergrad, my father got sick. I had to take, about a year off from finishing my school. And there was a lot of different things in undergrad that prevented me from doing it in the normal 4-year period. But my father's health was important, and I had to deal with that, right? We all have something that we're dealing with externally. On Friday, we talked to someone who had overcame breast cancer while building a family, a career, and all of these different things. And she had to pivot the internal, external things that she had going on and work those into her goals and where she wanted to be. And, her career trajectory had to slow down a little bit versus, ramp up where she was in her 20s. There's a lot of different things that will come into play that you can't control. And you just have to think about how you're going to mitigate or overcome those destroyers. So some of them, like we mentioned, are internal. So if there's some internal things that you're working through, what are they and how do you identify them? So if there's skill development opportunities for you, strategic partnerships, Brandy mentioned mentorship. It doesn't need to be a formalized mentorship. It could be tapping someone you admire on the shoulder and saying, would you be open to having some chats so I could pick your brain on how to work on these things? And, I admire you in the XYZ, and I would love to get your feedback. I can't imagine a universe where someone would say no, or they will say maybe not right now, but here's a referral, and then maybe let's circle back in like 6 months. And it's what is more positive than telling someone that you admire them. So I do encourage you to please, reach out and ask people that so that you can, recognize your destroyers and develop some type of resilience around that, and then overcome it so that you come out of the other side doing better and more close to what you want to do in your career. So that's essentially the end of our ABCDs. I have one more slide just to kind of give you how to stay connected with us. So Brandy mentioned earlier on about our podcast. So season 1, it was a learning curve. So it's essentially Brandy and I chit-chatting about different topics. Season 2, since we're a little bit more established and we've been meeting incredible people along the way, we have pivoted to more of an interview style where we're bringing about 18 to 20 different individuals, walks of life, and we are talking to them from the perspective of being a career rebel, someone who started from the bottom and now they're here. They have overcome all sorts of struggles and have a story to share that we can draw from inspiration. We are available on all social media platforms, and we put out different types of information. So if you like short form, Instagram is where Brandy is pushing out a lot of short form things. We have a blog on our page, which we're putting out a lot more long form content, how-tos, top 10s, and so on and so forth, and a bunch of free downloadable resources that are a work in progress. So the ABCDs that we talked about today is also a guide that's pre-fillable. And it's the first part of some of the things that we work on and talk about. So you can go on there and you can download it. You can sign up for our newsletter, which we also push out a lot of different content depending on what may be a hot topic at that moment, learning opportunities from people or coaching clients that we're learning from, and we'll pick and choose different things and push it out there. We also take requests of how to handle something, and we'll put it together and push it out. And then last but not least, so we offer coaching, we have speaking engagements like today, and we have merchandise. We have been a growing platform for the last 2 years. And, any way that we can continue to build our Misfits community, We would love to continue to meet and grow and establish a better platform for people just like us.
I couldn't have said it better.
I just need to learn how to stop sharing. Okay, now I would like to pivot to more interactive. Now that let me tell you, Teams really throws me off. If you want to, that's how I know that I'm getting up there in age. When you change, like you move my cheese and I'm having a meltdown. Okay, so I see that Daphne wrote, my blind spot is coming off as rough or aggressive or demanding when in my head, I'm just being honest. So I speak slow and choose my words more carefully, which to me feels like I'm over explaining myself to be understood because I'm not being direct to avoid sounding rough or aggressive or demanding. I also seek out assistance from management to help me reword, if needed, my statement to ensure my message comes across as it should. Thanks, Daphne, for sharing that. I think that's a really, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable to share your blind spot. But I think that's a good point to lean on the people around you when you feel like you might fall short in a certain area. And that's why you have your work, your colleagues and people that you can build off of. So, I have another comment. Oh no, she just wrote a course. Anybody else want to share before I start calling on people?
Well, while we're waiting, I just want to reiterate that Isabel and I are doing a lot to build the community free resources. Again, she mentioned our Instagram and our Facebook. We do have a Facebook community that's a private community of career rebels. And the whole point is for even people like Daphne who, may be struggling through something and maybe you haven't even gone to your supervisor or tapped somebody. The whole point of the community is for you to go in there and share some of your vulnerability, whatever your successes, your failures that you might want to share, and get some camaraderie, feedback, and all that good stuff from like-minded people and your peers. So I do recommend all of you to please go and check us out on all platforms. I'm sure that there's some form of content that we're creating, whether it be, as Isabel said, podcasts or Facebook communities or Instagram. If you're really into short form educational stuff, it's all there. It's free. We just ask that you like and share.
So I'm going to go down the list just to I want to learn from more of the people. So like Daphne's bravery to share her blind spots, but I'm going down the list. First of all, Marco is too quiet and I see him on here and he's usually on camera. So Marco, if you are here, I would like to learn a little bit more about maybe something that you overcome and that you can share with anyone. There we go. Because he's too quiet. I'm not used to it.
No, I'm here. I think, and I work on this consciously, so it's not a blind spot. I actually try to work on this, and I'm doing it right now, which is in terms of communication. I think I've always, especially in English, I perceive myself as having a little bit of a handicap if it's, given it's my second language. But then I guess opposite to, or something that plays against me a little bit, as I get more confident in a conversation, I tend to speak faster. And that's not great, adding different factors to it, right? So actually one thing that of course, like getting feedback on that. And about talking very specifically, there's a new feature in Microsoft Teams. Actually, if you haven't seen it, it's called something like Speech Coach. And it will tell you if you're speaking too fast, and it will tell you if it's pretty great. It will tell you if you're using the same word several times. So yeah, but I think, one top of my head that I always try to work on, I think it's that one.
And I think about you even stepping down and saying, hey, the NFP, I can't lead the Latin BRG this year because I need to give myself capacity back. And I think that you love this and you had to be strategic. So I thought about that when I said your name, because I tend to say yes to everything. And I'm like, holy cow, why did I just say yes to everything? And then your plate is too full. So thank you for sharing. We got somebody else that just jumped in. So Mario said, my blind spot is that I can be too reasonable. This can lend to not being assertive when I need to be. I'm from Iowa, and there is a real thing called being Iowa nice.
I could definitely I could definitely identify with that. As I mentioned, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. The big thing with me though is that I moved to Brooklyn 20 years ago. So you learn very quickly not to say hello, good morning to people on the train. And it teaches you sort of to how to get those rough around the edges. But what I can say though is that the assertive piece is one thing. I mean, you have to learn how to be assertive in certain situations. But I wouldn't do away too much with the Iowa nice, because I do find that what Northerners consider my Southern charm, it really helps me when I'm trying to when I'm trying to get resolve. So I figured out a really safe middle of assertive. I'm probably on the other end of assertive now, like maybe earlier in like maybe my 20s or so. I might not have been as assertive as I am now, but now I'm like super Brooklyn assertive now. Um, but I do keep a little bit of my Southern charm because I do kind of feel like it takes the sting off a little bit. So find ways to kind of like bend it together to sort of create your secret sauce around being assertive.
So you mentioned about Iowa nice, and I've seen Irma, and she's been looking at me knowing that I was going to send something her way at some point. So Irma, I think about when I think about nice and I think about assets starting off like the ABCDs, like how do you specifically, because there's a lot of our team on here, even when things are blowing up and on fire around you, you still keep that like Iowa nice without, she's in Queens, but she keeps the Iowa nice, and really dealing with like, a lot of escalations and sensitive, high value, clients of ours, advisors. So how do you navigate that and help people when they're, dealing with rough situations?
I think the first thing I do is that I empathize. I understand the frustration that they are feeling and what's coming at them. Melissa just commented. So for me, it's more of I try to remove the emotion of it, remove the emotion from our team member that may be frustrated and upset or feeling that they failed in some sort of way, and also I remove the emotion of the individual that they're dealing with, and really looking at what the facts are. So I try to focus on the facts, and then once I focus on the facts and I'm honed into what is actually needed or required of our team member, then I go into when I shift and now I'm support. So now I'm really looking at this individual. What is it that they're being asked of, and then how can I help them get there? And then once we've accomplished that, what can I do? How can I move the mountain? And I am a big believer that even if I am moving the mountain, I am giving it back to the individual and saying, this is what I did. Let me show you what I did. And you go and you deliver that message. I always want them to feel good about it. I always want them to feel like they contributed to it. So I'm not just fully taking the monkey, but I'm supporting them. And then that helps them hopefully build the confidence and they can see how they can handle it. But for me, it's very difficult at times to manage the expectations that can most of the time, I'm not going to say some of the time, but most of the time be unrealistic, and having to put it in its proper place and be that voice for our team when they don't feel comfortable putting those individuals in their place and saying, this is an unrealistic ask. So I'm full front, I'm in front of the war, as they say, I'm front line, and making sure that I'm helping them. Not only just our team, but also my colleagues like Isabel and I. We shift things back and forth to each other on a daily basis, not only offering support, but I'm very well aware of where my weaknesses lie and where hers are strength. And we really feed off of each other in that beautiful way. And we make really nice music together. Wouldn't you agree, Isabel?
Yeah.
I'll pay her after this.
Yeah,
Mario, I saw you put yourself on camera. Did you want to jump in?
Oh, because probably most people never have the fortunate blessing of ever meeting an Iowan, but there's some paisanos in Iowa. They're all together. When you find them, they're all there.
Well, our partner of our firm is from Iowa, so Irma sent me a message saying, "Is that Angela Lamar pretending to be someone else?" So,
But yeah, I was born and raised there, and there's definitely a thing there. Like my dad might be from Mexico, and my mom might be from a small town in Iowa. But that's like the one thing that was like ingrained in me. Like my dad will still tell me like, "Hey, I wasn't able to go to college or even finish high school myself, but the one thing I want you to be is considerate, like with people." And we try to raise you kids to be considerate. I mean, this is something where my dad would be like, I'd be like 10, we'd be driving out our little town of 300 people, and he would see somebody walking along the highway, another Latino, and he would like pick them up, like, "Hey, where are you going? Well, you got to go to town. I'll take you." So there I'd be in the middle, like on a pickup, there's only 3 seats. So I'm in the middle, like literally the shifting sticks, like right in front of me, and this person I don't know. And my dad's just chatting up. And so when I got into corporate America, started working for a record keeper in Des Moines, and then came out to Texas, and then recently joined NFP. You start to find where like your Iowa sensibilities don't completely mesh up, and the times where you think you should be advocating for yourself, but you don't know how to do it. You start to really think about like, oh, I need to learn that. I need to flex that muscle or build that muscle because you see where other people have it. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah. That's awesome insight.
We need more of the positivity in the world that we live in today. So I can appreciate all the kind people that I meet on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
So does anyone else want to talk through, assets or navigating, a blind spot or some opportunity that they had in their career that other people can learn from? If not, I'll just keep going down the list and everyone can yell at me later. Okay, Sonia. So you're the first one that I see on the list. You have been a manager in the department for the last, let's say, 5 or so years. So how did you navigate, and what were some of the challenges for navigating, like becoming maybe a peer, then getting promoted and being a manager to the people that were peers to you at one time? Like, how were those, I guess, blind spots or maybe more of like destroyers that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I do have to say that was a great struggle for me. I did, and I feel I still do at times, suffer from that imposter syndrome. I have to pull myself apart from being a peer. And now, I'm managing individuals, so I need to put myself in a situation where I'm still relatable, but then building up that confidence in them that they can reach out to me, and I can be able to provide that extra feedback that they need, not only as a peer, and then feel like, okay, I know I have the similar experience as her, but what can she bring to the table now with this elevated position that I cannot handle? So I think that was a situation that was very difficult for me, putting myself apart from the individuals I used to work closely with, and building that relationship with them and that trust with them. And I think that was my biggest struggle my first year. And, going into my second year of management, I'm like, okay, now I really need to focus on, I've proven to them that I have, the experience, but how can I relate to them? How can we build a relationship as a manager and employee now? And, that's obviously something I'm still working on. And I think that's always, as a manager, that's something that you'll continue working on as you get to know your, the people you work with and oversee. So
you're doing a terrific job.
Thank you. Sorry, you caught me off guard.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Fern, yes. Oh, you're on mute, my friend. You were enjoying the cookie.
I was in listening to everybody, and I was kind of reflecting back of, when I first started in HR 40 plus years ago, and starting off in an individual contributor role. And probably the biggest challenge or the blind spot that I had is how do I change my mindset from an individual contributor to in a position of leadership, and understanding, really what goes into that. Because there's definitely the good, and there's definitely the bad, and there's definitely the ugly that comes with it. And so, so over the years, as I talk with people that are interested in getting into leadership or management, I always ask, do you know what you're getting yourself into? What do you perceive that to be? because it's and there are other ways to grow your career, not just vertically, meaning, going to management. You can grow it horizontally, adding depth and breadth and becoming an expert in the field that you're in. Those people certainly have just as much value as others. So it's always an interesting, when you were asking the question of the things that people have struggled with, and I was kind of thinking back, and I was thinking, yeah, I can remember just having that apprehension that you just didn't quite have that. You were waiting to feel confident, is what you were waiting for, and quite honestly, I think about again, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to quotes, and I read these quotes and I save them. And there's one in particular that sticks out for me. It says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." And so, that's something that over time, throughout your career, you will make changes. You will make changes either because you choose to, or because you have no choice. I mean, those are just the two things that happen. And then you realize that change isn't bad. At the end of the day, it's never as bad as you think, but it'll never be the way you want. But it's never as bad as you think. And Marco, you reminded me of a story once where I was working with a Puerto Rican manager, a regional leader, and he was meeting with his team, and he spoke real fast too. He spoke real fast in English, and he came up to me and he said, and I was sitting in the meeting, and he said, "Can you give me your opinion about something?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "Am I not communicating well with the group? And is there something going on?" And I said, "No," I said, I know what you're trying to convey." I said, "But here, let me ask you this question, because I was this way." I asked him, "Do you think in Spanish and try to speak in English?" And he looked at me. I mean, he was staring at me, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Slow down. Just don't stop thinking in Spanish." I said, as weird as that may sound, and that's the way I think. I was wired the same way. And of course, over time, as you become more aware, you kind of change the pace. So I don't know if that's true for anybody else, but it was true for me, and it was true for that former manager that I was working with from Puerto Rico.
Thanks, Vern. Irma? You're on mute.
Yes, I'm aware. I was just telling my daughter to put the YouTube on mute because she just walked in and now the house is hers. So you talk about you talk about blind spots, right? So I had a question for the both of you. Do you ever think about reversal blind spot? And what I mean by that is, to Fern's point, when he said he's been in the industry for 40 plus years, when someone's been in an organization for a very long time, how do you manage when the blind spot is not yours, but it is your leadership or your company's blind spot of you, and so how they see you? And I bring that up because I oftentimes feel like there's a blind spot when it comes to me, because I've been at this organization my entire adult life. So I wonder how you would speak to. I wonder sometimes, am I still, the 17-year-old Puerto Rican, half Black girl that walked through the door, and am I being viewed as something else, even though I've climbed, obviously, but it's always something that sticks with me. So how would you handle that reversal blind spot? I don't even know if that's a thing. I just said it that way.
You just made it, and we're going to take it.
Yeah. You might just get like lunch out of it, but that's it. Don't get crazy.
I want more.
Brenda, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So because I would consider myself not a hopper, right? I've had, I went from music into insurance, and I've been with, 3 companies my entire career, and all of them exceeded 6 or 7 years. So you do kind of get stuck in a way, based off of how people perceive you. I had that same thing. I mean, I'm African American, and a lot of times when I was in rooms, I was the only Black and also the only woman. And so you kind of almost feel like you're already sort of, stagnated already, so to speak, just based off of perception. And that could be internal stuff too. But I always think about, even in today, I always think about rebranding myself. And that's part of the misfits piece, the breaking outside of that box, because what you have to figure out is if that perception is internal or external. Because what I learned for myself is that a lot of times you think that people have this perception of you and it's completely opposite of what you think, right? And then it just really depends on what your goals are in the organization. So are you looking for, upward movement? Are you looking for more understanding? Are you looking for more visibility? Kind of figuring out what you want and reverse engineering your way into that, and intentionally doing things to break outside of the mold. And sometimes that might be you changing up your patterns, you changing up the way that you communicate, you changing up who you speak to. I call myself like the most extroverted introvert ever. Like I can sit for hours and do deep work and not have human connection at all. But that's also one of my blind spots, right? So part of the perception that I've worked on changing for myself is speaking to people, smiling at people. Isabel used to say all the time that I have resting BITCH face, because when I'm really, really focused, because when I'm really, really focused, like I'm focused, and I can see how for somebody on the outside looking in who doesn't know me, you may think that I'm super intense, when really if you just tap me on the shoulder, and tell me a joke, I have the loudest laugh ever. But, I would think a lot about how much of that is internal, really, and how much of that is external. And if you're trying to pivot yourself into another space, meaning into another position, in other words, you want something else or something different, then you have to work on the inside first and then figure out what you need to do to break that mode of how people see you.
I think that's a great answer. And knowing Irma, we all know Irma for what you are. So I think that concept of rebranding yourself and thinking about what you want, I think it's a great exercise for you to dig deep and determine what you want next, and why you want next. Is it because someone else wants next? Do you want next? What does next look like? It could be salary, it could be career, it could be just more responsibilities, exposure. So I think what Brandy mentioned, Brandy, you're raising your hand, by the way. Do you have a question?
No, I don't. Sorry.
But I think that she answered it spot on. I think that's a really good outside perspective on, how to approach it. Albert, I saw that you took yourself off camera, or you put yourself on camera. Did you have?
Not really, but while I do have, the floor, I guess I could share one thing that I kind of felt was like my blind spot. When I was younger in my career, the one thing that I did not do very well was to ask for help when I needed it. And which, I mean, now that I look back at it, like hindsight, I mean, you're here with the team, you're here to work together and grow and learn together, right? But I guess kind of like how I grew up, I was always taught to, be responsible, take on as much as you can, do what you can, and don't really ask for help, because then it kind of makes you look like you can't handle what you're doing and stuff like that. So as I got more comfortable in my career, I decided, hey, I can delegate some stuff here. It doesn't make me necessarily look like I can't handle it. It kind of just makes me a little bit more effective knowing that I have other people to lean on. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Albert. I think that's a good point. A lot of us look at the people around us as competition, and versus it looking like, supporting one another, uplifting one another. I think that that's probably something a lot of folks struggle with in the beginning of their career, especially when they're trying to elevate themselves and they're, stepping on the people around them. So thanks for sharing that. Any other shares that anyone wants? We're already, I think, 5 minutes to the end. Monica, I feel like I should call on you.
I don't have to.
I mean, I think that you probably juggle a lot of things and you work with, one of the top people at NFP. So how are you managing and navigating some of those things, or any of those ABCDs that you want to highlight?
I think my thing is I deal a lot with details, the smallest details and all the details of working with Mike James and other people at NFP. So when I read emails, I I scan everything and I pick out everything that's the detail. And I think I try to communicate, or like when I respond to an email and I see the details that are missing details, and you try to ask people about them, they're not picking that up. So then I'll have to do another email saying, okay, let's go back to these details. So I think my challenge sometimes is communicating and being an effective communicator and trying to get the answers that I need from when I send out a communication. So, I get it when you send it to me, I kind of get it because I scan everything and that's my thing. But trying to get sometimes details from people that want something, that's hard. And so I try to respond nicely, of course, but and then trying to reword so maybe I'm not coming across as being effective or being that direct, communication. Maybe it's not coming out that or what's missing. So I think that's the thing that I have to work on picking my right words, on trying to get the right, trying to get the details of the details of the details of something. Because sometimes people respond to me, it's like, I asked you 2 questions and you didn't answer any of them. So it's like, okay, here we go again. So that's, I think, my thing of just, now I kind of think of, and I'll reread my email once or twice and say, okay, that's pretty simple. That's pretty direct. So that's where I'm trying to I guess, that's one of my challenges.
Yeah, thanks. I noticed that we all focused on some of our blind spots and our destroyers. So it's just a reminder to also focus on your assets, the positive aspects of you. I was having a conversation this morning with someone and she talked about, and I'll make it more PG, but just how we hold on to a lot of the negative things around us. I think she correlated with like a tornado that picks things up. And she said, the tornado picks up all of the things and throws it in. We always carry the negative. She's like, we really need to start like celebrating some of the wins, some of the positives. So in this case, it would be the assets. So I do say when we're walking out of this conversation, instead of focusing on just the more negative ones that you have to work on, but also like focus on the things that you're really good at, the things that you have overcome already in the last year, whether it be work or personal, just celebrate, the positive little thing that you have, going on right now.
Which probably makes that a blind spot.
Yeah, exactly.
I think naturally we think of the negative because we want to solve it, right?
True,
and most of us are in positions. There probably isn't a problem that doesn't come to each person's desk that's on this call that they don't need to solve, and it's as a result of something negative, that you're going to turn into a positive. And it's really the gifts that you have that allow you to turn those negatives into a positive. There was one little thing that kind of hit me when you were asking the questions about blind spots. And I don't, and I'm making a generalized statement here about where we are today, all of corporate America, since coming off the pandemic, there's still so much noise in the system right now between what employees want, what the workforce want, what companies want. And somewhere in between is the customer, somewhere in there. But it's really about the relationship, and what needs and wants and desires are out there. And there's blind spots, I think, on both sides. And so I think people are trying to figure it out. I don't think that it's normalized yet. And so it's just, and that makes it even more complex for each of us, based on the work that we do, because we're having to contend and sort out something that we never signed up for. We were never prepared for it. And believe me, in my role, I've had people say, well, Vern, what do we do? And say, hey, listen, practicing HR during the pandemic was not one of the chapters I read. It just wasn't there. And so everybody, and neither were for leaders and managers. They didn't read a chapter around this stuff. How to manage in a crisis or in an uncertain situation. I mean, it's always uncertain, but this was like grossly uncertain.
Yeah.
So it's been hard, I think, for people in general. And that's where I think being a little bit more forgiving and having a little bit more grace kind of helps out.
Mhm.
You're spot on. Oh, Irma.
I'd say that flexibility
Oh, she
and
was just-
adaptability. Flexibility and adaptability, if you don't have that asset, is definitely an asset that you should work on adding to your repertoire in general. I think that everybody can go a little bit further with some adaptability and some flexibility, even for your own self. Give yourself grace, right?
All right, we're coming at the end, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining, and for everyone who we picked on to participate. Thank you so much, and carving out the last hour to spend with us. Thank you so much. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.